Subaiti, let's make pho, Vietnam's national dish. This is a delicious noodle soup. Get ready. The ingredients are onion, garlic, ginger, jalapeno, and lime. We'll also use green onion. I couldn't find Thai basil, so I'm using mint and fresh cilantro. My cilantro is not looking too hot, so I'm just gonna place that in some water and let that perk up a little bit. The chicken bouillon powder, fish sauce, salt, MSG, and the rock sugar. I also like pho paste, and I use meatballs, so we'll use the beef tendon balls, sriracha, hoisin, and either a fried pig ear or a pork rind. You can do fried shallot and garlic, either prepackaged or homemade is fine. And then of course we need our beef bone to make that broth. I like to pick up bones that have both the marrow and some of the flesh still on the bone. You can get these from local farmers, and you can also get this from butchers and in the deli section of most grocery stores if you just ask the butcher for those. And it's become a little more mainstream, so they're now selling them at Kroger and Meijer. We're also going to use the rice stick noodle. You can pick these up at most Asian or international stores. They do come both frozen and fresh. I like the fresh. I think it tastes better. And we're using 10 pounds because I'm making a lot of pho today. And this seasoning bag is really going to give you all of the seasonings that you need to make the pho. They do come with these mesh pouches. It includes star anise, cinnamon, cardamom. It does have fennel seeds as well, cloves. I'm going to use 2 of these packets, plus I'm going to add some more star anise, more fennel, more cardamom. I just like a lot of flavor. So if you like it bold, don't be shy, but definitely measure with your heart and measure to your preference. We'll take all of these beautiful seasonings and spices and we'll put those in the mesh bag and tie that up tight. Just a reminder that all of my ingredients and measurements are in the description box below the video. And if you love Southeast Asian food, please become a subscriber. Your support would be awesome. Let's start making broth. I like to have both my onion and my garlic. I peel my onion. I don't really bother with peeling my garlic because I'll be putting that in one of the mesh bags. And then I also like to quarter my ginger root. Let's go ahead and place our onion, garlic, and ginger on a baking sheet. Slide it into the oven on a high broil and keep an eye on it until it gets a nice char. Next up, let's get our pots filled with water. You'll need 1 oversized pot for your pho broth, and then we'll need a second smaller pot so that we can blanch our beef bones before we put them into our broth pot. So I fill those up with water. I put them both on my stovetop on high heat and bring to a boil. While we're waiting, let's check back on those onion, garlic, and ginger. You can see here we have slight char on the onion, no char on the ginger. I went ahead and removed the garlic so it wouldn't burn, and then placed it in the oven for about 10 more minutes, and then we have that nice char. Here I am placing my garlic into the mesh bag. You could put this straight into the pot, but I don't want to have to strain it out later. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that to a bag. All right, now that our smaller pot is at a full boil, place in your beef bones just so that they can blanch. This is going to help draw out some of those impurities that we wouldn't want in our soup. And the blanch should only take maybe a minute, 2 minutes at the max. We don't want to overcook the bones. So then you can remove those into a strainer and then run cool water over those to rinse. Now we'll bring it all together to make our pho broth. Add your blanched beef bones to your large pot along with the onion and the ginger. Next, I add both of my mesh bags containing the garlic and our spices to the pot. I tie them to the handle so that they don't sink down into the bottom of my large pot. I'll then use my tongs to make sure that those mesh bags are submerged. Keep this on the highest heat for 2 hours and just let it boil. During the boiling process, you might see some impurities pop up to the surface of your broth. You can use a strainer to grab those out and dispose of those. This will keep your broth much cleaner. After 2 hours, give your broth a really good stir. You'll notice that the onions have become softened, the bones are boiled down, and the meat that's attached to them is cooked now. Your broth should be getting darker. From this point, what we want to do is add more seasoning. So add that fish sauce, our chicken bouillon powder, MSG, salt, our rock sugar. Put that right into the pot and it will dissolve as it cooks. Place our lid on there slightly ajar. Bring our heat down to low or simmer for another 2 hours. This might seem like a long cooking time, but pho is a labor of love that's well worth it. Next up, let's talk about the meatballs. So with pho, you can use all sorts of protein. You could use fish balls, meatballs, you can use thinly cut raw steak, you can also use shrimp, maybe even chicken if you wanted. What I like is the meatballs, so that's what we're going to use today. The smaller meatball was a prepackaged meatball, and these larger meatballs are homemade. I like to have my meatballs bite-sized, so I'll either cut them in half or in quarters. Next up, let's wash our veggies. So these are the veggies that we're going to use to top our pho once we've assembled our bowl. So I give those a good rinse until the water runs clean and then set those aside to dry. I'll set out the other garnishes, including our pork ear. I will slice the lime in small wedges and then diagonally cut our jalapeno. Right about now, you're probably wondering, where is the bean sprout? And while it's very popular and I recommend it if you are trying pho for the first time, I personally don't love it, so I always exclude it from my recipes. To finish up our toppings, I will thinly slice our green onion, pluck the mint leaves from the stem, and do a rough chop on our cilantro. Next up, let's do the noodle. So I put mine in a large bowl. Mine includes a strainer. I like to soak my noodle in fairly hot water for about 5 minutes and then dump that and then add cold water to the bowl, and I'll just make sure they're all submerged. And then I just let that sit until I'm ready to assemble, which is what we're gonna do now because we are in the home stretch. You can see our broth is dark. The smell in the house is amazing. I like to bring my broth back to a boil, and then once at a boil, I will add my noodles to this strainer, and I just dunk that very quickly, just for a second, into the broth to make those soft. If your broth is hot enough, then you could just put your noodles directly in your bowl, ladle the broth over, and they'll also get soft. So into the bowl, I will add hoisin, sriracha, and this pho paste for extra flavor. I squeeze in my lime, and then I also just toss the lime in. You could toss that out if you didn't want to include that. And then I ladle my piping hot broth over my noodles. Just remember, this is a soup, so you want to have your noodles submerged plus a little extra broth. Then I like to take my spoon and my chopstick and get all of those flavors mixed in really well. Next, I'll add my meatball to that strainer, place that into our pot to get those nice and hot. And then now we're ready to add all of our really delicious toppings. So I will add cilantro, mint, our green onions right there on top, our dried shallot and dried garlic. Place my pig ear right on top, and then I like to use this spicy fried chili oil in my pho as well. That's optional if you're not into spice. And that's really it. Pho can really build you up when you don't feel well. It's wonderful on a cold day. It's the best hangover cure that's ever existed. But more importantly, it's served best with friends and family. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the love and support. I hope you will become a subscriber and follow my content. Until next time, Cup Jai.